My name is Alexandra Chen, but everyone calls me Alex. For 3 years, I've worked as a receptionist at Elite Motors, Miami's most prestigious Ferrari dealership. But what my boss, Richard Sterling, never knew was that I was far more than just the woman who answered his phones. The morning everything changed started like any other. I arrived early at 7:30 a.m., the Miami sun already blazing against the gleaming rows of Ferraris worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. The dealership was a stunning piece of architecture, all glassed and sweeping curves, designed to showcase the multimillion-dollar inventory inside. I remember straightening my simple black blazer before unlocking the front doors, the familiar scent of leather and new car interiors greeting me. "Morning, Alex," called out Marco, our head mechanic, as he wheeled a Ferrari F8 Tributo into the service bay. "Any chance of getting those overtime forms processed today? The guys are asking about last month's holiday weekend." I grimaced, thinking of the stack of overtime requests sitting in Richard's inbox. "I'll try again at the morning meeting," I promised. The service team had worked through Memorial Day weekend to handle a special event, but Richard had been too busy to approve their extra pay for 3 weeks straight. What no one at Elite Motors knew, not Richard, not the sales team with their matching Rolexes, not even kind-hearted Marco, was that I had a very personal interest in seeing the dealership run properly. The truth was carefully hidden in layers of holding companies and real estate trusts. I owned the land the dealership sat on, all 5 acres of prime Miami commercial property. It had been my grandfather's last gift to me before he passed away 3 years ago. "Property is power, little one," he told me from his hospital bed, his voice weak but his eyes sharp as ever. "But knowledge, knowing when to reveal your power, that's everything." So I followed his advice. I took the receptionist position at Elite Motors to learn the business from the ground up, watching and waiting. I had an MBA from Wharton and enough family money to never work again. But grandfather had taught me the value of understanding every level of a business. And what I'd learned about Richard Sterling over 3 years made my blood boil. The morning meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp in the dealership's glass-walled conference room. Richard swept in last, as usual, his custom Tom Ford suit perfectly pressed. "Let's make this quick," he announced, not bothering to sit down. "Sales numbers for last month were decent, but I know we can do better. Jenkins, your team needs to push the F8s harder. We got too many sitting on the lot." I cleared my throat softly. "Mr. Sterling, about the service team's overtime forms." "Not now, Alex," he cut me off without even looking my way. "Sir, they've been waiting 3 weeks, and legally." Richard turned then, his face twisting into that familiar smirk that made my hand tighten on my notebook. "Look, if you're so concerned about a few hours of overtime, maybe you should find a job more suited to your capabilities. Answering phones can't be that demanding." The conference room went silent. I could feel Marco tensing behind me, could see Jenkins and the other salespeople suddenly finding their phones fascinating. "After all," Richard continued, clearly enjoying his audience, "it's not like you contribute anything meaningful here. You're just a receptionist. Frankly, a worthless one at that, since you can't seem to understand when to keep quiet." I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. 3 years of watching Richard bully employees, dodge regulations, and cut corners had led to this moment. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. "Knowledge is knowing when to reveal your power." "You're absolutely right, Mr. Sterling," I said quietly, reaching into my bag. "I am just a receptionist. But there's something you should see." I pulled out a thick manila envelope and removed several documents, sliding them across the polished conference table. "This is the deed to the land Elite Motors sits on. And these are the property tax records for the past 3 years. Richard glanced at the papers dismissively. "What's your point?" "The dealership has a long-term lease with some investment group. Chen Holdings or something. Chen Real Estate Trust, actually." I corrected him. "Founded by my grandfather 30 years ago. I inherited it when he passed away 3 years ago, right before I started working here." The color began draining from Richard's face as the implications sank in. I continued, my voice steady. "I also have here a complete record of every regulatory violation you've committed since taking over as owner. Every falsified emissions test, every illegal markup, every instance of overtime denial." I placed another stack of papers on the table. "The Ferrari corporate office might be interested in these. They take their brand reputation very seriously." Richard's face had gone from pale to flushed with anger. "You're bluffing. You can't." "I can." I cut him off. "And I will. You see, the lease agreement has some very specific clauses about regulatory compliance and ethical business practices. Clauses you violated repeatedly." I stood up, smoothing my blazer. "You have until Monday morning to resign as owner and transfer your controlling shares to the employee trust I've set up. If you don't, I'll terminate the lease, notify Ferrari Corporate, and contact the Department of Labor about those overtime violations." I'm sure the Miami Herald would love the story too. The conference room erupted in chaos as I walked out. Marco caught up with me at my desk. 3 years, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You worked the front desk for 3 years, dealing with his abuse when you owned the whole damn property." I smiled, thinking of my grandfather. I needed to understand the business from every angle, needed to know its true value, its people. I gestured to the overtime forms on my desk. "Speaking of which, let's get these processed. I think you'll find the new ownership much more prompt with payroll." Richard stormed out of the dealership an hour later, his face purple with rage. He tried to take the Ferrari he'd been using as his personal vehicle, but I'd already had Marco change the keys. "The car belongs to the dealership," I called out as he stood fuming in the parking lot. "But don't worry, I called you an Uber. After all, we wouldn't want to be worthless hosts." As his Uber pulled away, I sat down at my reception desk one last time and began composing an email to Ferrari's corporate office. By Monday morning, Elite Motors would have new ownership, new management, and a very different way of doing business. But first, I had some overtime forms to process. The weekend after my confrontation with Richard was anything but quiet. By Friday evening, my phone was already buzzing with calls from Ferrari's corporate office in Italy. I sat in what had been Richard's office, now mine, speaking in fluent Italian to their executives, explaining the situation and my plans for Elite Motors. Ms. Chen, the Ferrari VP of North American Operations, said, switching to English, "We've been concerned about Sterling's management for some time, but had no concrete evidence. You say you have documentation?" "Complete records," I confirmed, looking at the files I'd meticulously gathered over 3 years. Including evidence of unauthorized markups on limited edition models, falsified service records, and customer complaints that were buried. There was a pause on the line. "And you've worked as the receptionist?" I smiled, remembering my grandfather's words about learning a business from the ground up. "The best way to understand a company's true operations is from the front desk, sir. You see everything, hear everything, and most importantly, if you're patient, you can document everything." The VP chuckled. "Your grandfather taught you well. Chen Holdings has been a respected name in Asian business circles for decades. We would be very interested in maintaining our relationship with Elite Motors under your leadership." By Sunday night, everything was in motion. Richard, faced with the choice between a graceful exit or legal destruction, had signed over his controlling shares to the employee trust I'd established. His last act was a desperate email to the staff, trying to paint himself as a victim of corporate espionage. I forwarded it to our lawyers without comment. Monday morning, I arrived early as usual, but not to sit at the reception desk. Instead, I gathered the entire staff in the showroom before opening. 60 pairs of eyes watched me as I stood in front of our flagship Ferrari SF90 Stradale. "Many of you have questions," I began, "about what happened Friday and what happens next. Let me be clear. Elite Motors isn't just changing ownership, we're changing how we do business entirely." I gestured to Marco, our head mechanic. "First, all outstanding overtime has been processed. The checks will be in your accounts by noon." A cheer went up from the service team. "Additionally, we're implementing a new profit-sharing program. Every employee, from sales to service to support staff, will now have equity in the dealership's success." Jenkins, our top salesman, raised his hand. "Ms. Chen, Alex, what about our sales targets? The pressure under Mr. Sterling was unsustainable and unethical." I finished. "We're moving to a customer-focused model. No more pushing cars on people who can't afford them. No more hidden fees or markups. Ferrari chose us to represent their brand because of excellence, not exploitation." I could see the tension leaving people's shoulders, replaced by cautious hope. "But make no mistake," I continued, "I expect excellence from every person in this room. We will be the most prestigious, most ethical, and most successful Ferrari dealership in North America. Not by cutting corners, but by doing things right. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. I brought in a consulting team to modernize our systems, implemented a new customer service protocol, and personally reviewed every active sale to ensure it met our new ethical standards. Some customers were surprised to receive refund checks for unauthorized markups, along with VIP invitations to our upcoming client appreciation event. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. 2 salespeople, unable to adapt to our new ethical standards, quit. A few of Richard's old friends in the luxury car world tried to spread rumors about us. But the results spoke for themselves. By the end of the first month, our customer satisfaction scores had skyrocketed. Our service department's efficiency improved by 40% now that they had proper staffing and resources. Sales actually increased. It turned out that treating customers with respect and transparency led to more referrals and repeat business. 6 weeks after the takeover, I was working late in my office when Marco knocked on the door. "About a minute, boss?" he asked, holding a folder. "Always," I said, gesturing to a chair. "And please, it's still Alex." He sat down, shaking his head with a smile. "Still can't believe you spent 3 years answering phones and filing paperwork when you owned the whole place." "Best education I could have gotten," I replied. "I learned who the real heroes were, like a certain service team that stayed late every weekend to make sure customers' cars were perfect, even when they weren't getting paid overtime." Marco laughed. "About that, I wanted to show you something." He opened the folder, revealing service records. "Remember the SF90 that Richard could never figure out? The one with the intermittent electrical issue?" I nodded. It had been a source of constant customer complaints. "Well, with the new diagnostic equipment you approved and proper time to test it," he handed me the solution, neatly documented. "Fixed. Permanently." "Excellent work," I said, genuinely impressed. "Make sure the customer gets a detailed report and comp their next service as an apology for the wait." Marco stood to leave, then paused. "You know, the guys in service were talking. Richard used to say we were worthless grease monkeys. Called you worthless too. Funny how the worthless people turned out to be the ones who actually knew how to run this place right." After you left, I walked out to the showroom. The evening sun painted the Ferraris in shades of gold and crimson, their sleek lines reflecting the Miami sunset. On my grandfather's desk, now in my office, sat a framed photo of him standing in front of his first real estate acquisition. He was wearing overalls, having spent the day working alongside his maintenance crew. "Property is power," he'd always said. "But knowledge, knowing when to reveal your power, that's everything." I'd added my own lesson to his wisdom. True power isn't in humiliating others or proving your superiority. It's in building something meaningful, something that lifts everyone up. Elite Motors under Richard had been a monument to one man's ego. Now it was becoming something far more valuable. A business where excellence and ethics went hand in hand. Richard's worthless receptionist had turned out to be the owner he never saw coming. But more importantly, she turned his dealership into the success he could never achieve by valuing the very people he'd dismissed. The next morning, a familiar face appeared in the showroom. Richard's former assistant Lisa, who'd quit months ago after one too many verbal abuse incidents. "I heard things have changed," she said hesitantly. "That it's different now." I smiled, remembering how she'd always been kind to me when I was just the receptionist. "Very different. In fact, we're looking for a new customer relations manager, someone who knows our clients and understands the importance of treating people with respect." Her eyes widened. "Really? But I don't have a fancy degree or—" "You have something better," I cut in. "Experience, integrity, and first-hand knowledge of how not to treat people. When can you start?" As I showed her around her new office, I caught our reflection in the window. 2 women Richard had called worthless, now helping to run one of the most successful Ferrari dealerships in the country. The irony would have been sweet enough on its own. But the real victory wasn't in proving him wrong. The real victory was in proving ourselves right. 3 months after the takeover, Ferrari's corporate office sent a team to evaluate our operations. They spent a week reviewing every aspect of the business, from sales to service to customer satisfaction. Their final report was glowing, with one particular comment that made me smile. Elite Motors represents the perfect fusion of excellence and ethics. Ms. Chen's innovative approach, combining deep operational knowledge with a commitment to employee empowerment and customer satisfaction, sets a new standard for luxury automotive retail. I had the report framed and hung in the break room, right next to our new mission statement. Excellence is not what we do, it's who we are. Richard's name faded from Miami's luxury car scene, but Elite Motors thrived. Our employee trust grew in value month after month, creating wealth not just for the salespeople but for every person who contributed to our success. The once worthless receptionist had turned a toxic workplace into a model of ethical business practice. Sometimes, on quiet evenings after the showroom closes, I still sit at the front desk for a few minutes. It reminds me of those 3 years of watching, learning, and planning. But mostly it reminds me that true worth isn't in titles or power. It's in what you build, how you treat people, and the legacy you create. As for that overtime paperwork that sparked the final confrontation, it's now processed automatically every Friday with bonuses for exceptional service. After all, in a business built on excellence, no contribution is ever worthless. The story of Elite Motors spread through the luxury car world, a cautionary tale about underestimating people and the power of patient, principled leadership. Richard still sometimes drives past the dealership in his leased BMW, seeing his former empire now shining brighter than ever. But he doesn't stop in anymore. After all, his Uber rating isn't quite up to our standards. These belong to Emma now, my mother-in-law Diana said, her perfectly manicured hands caressing the antique jewelry box that had been in my husband's family for generations. Her voice dripped with satisfaction as she slid the mahogany case across the dining table toward her daughter. After all, blood is thicker than marriage. I sat frozen in my chair, watching as Emma eagerly flipped open the ornate lid. Inside gleamed the collection of family heirlooms that my late grandmother-in-law Martha had specifically entrusted to me before she passed. Delicate pearl earrings from the 1920s, an Art Deco sapphire necklace, vintage diamond bracelets, each piece carrying nearly a century of family history. But Martha gave those to Sarah. My husband James protested weakly from beside me. They were meant for her. Diana's perfectly lined lips curved into a cold smile. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly in her final days, dear. We all know these precious pieces should stay with true family. Emma is your sister. She'll keep them in the bloodline. I watched Emma slip on the pearl earrings, admiring herself in the box's tiny mirror. The same earrings Martha had lovingly fastened to my ears on my wedding day 5 years ago, telling me how she'd worn them at her own wedding in 1952. These look much better on me anyway, Emma smirked, tilting her head to make the pearls catch the light. A real Douglas woman. The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. I learned early in my marriage that showing how deeply Diana and Emma's barbs hurt only encouraged them. Instead, I fingered the delicate gold locket around my neck, the last gift Martha had given me before she passed away 3 months ago. You're right, I said quietly, rising from the table. Thank you for taking such good care of them, Emma. Diana's triumphant smile faltered slightly at my calm acceptance. She'd clearly been hoping for tears or protests she could use to paint me as hysterical and grasping. I couldn't give her that satisfaction. Well, she sniffed, smoothing her expensive silk blouse, I'm glad you're finally seeing reason. Now about the summer house. That's enough, Mother, James cut in, his voice sharper than usual. The summer house belongs to Sarah and me. Grandma Martha's will was very clear about that. I squeezed his hand under the table, grateful for his support even though I wished he'd shown it earlier about the jewelry. But I understood. Years of his mother's manipulation had left deep grooves. We'll see about that, Diana muttered, but let the subject drop for now. I knew it was only temporary. Ever since Martha passed, Diana had been systematically working to strip away everything the kind old woman had left to me, claiming it all rightfully belonged to Emma instead. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I caught James watching me with guilty eyes in the bathroom mirror. I'm so sorry about the jewelry, he said softly. I should have stood up to her more. It's just, you know how she gets. I did know. Diana had raised emotional manipulation to an art form over the years, wielding guilt and family obligation like perfectly honed weapons. Still, the jewelry hurt more than I wanted to admit. It's okay, I said, though we both knew it wasn't. They're just things. But they weren't just things, and we both knew that too. They were tangible links to Martha, the only member of James' family who had truly welcomed me with open arms. While Diana and Emma had spent the last 5 years trying to subtly exclude and undermine me, Martha had been my fierce defender and dearest friend. I touched the locket at my throat again, remembering the last time I'd seen her. She'd been so frail in her hospital bed, but her eyes were sharp as ever as she'd pressed the necklace into my palm. "Keep this safe, dear one," she'd whispered. "When the time is right, you'll know what to do." I hadn't opened the locket yet. Something in Martha's tone that day had told me to wait, but after today's events, maybe it was finally time. As James slept beside me, I carefully unclasped the delicate chain and examined the antique gold heart. It took some careful maneuvering, but finally the tiny latch clicked open. Inside was a neatly folded slip of paper, Martha's elegant handwriting instantly recognizable. My hands trembled as I unfolded it under the soft glow of my bedside lamp. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Diana has likely begun her campaign to push you out of the family completely. I knew she would. I've watched her sharpen her knives for years. But what she doesn't know is that I've left you more than just jewelry and a summer house. There are papers in my old writing desk at the lake house. Papers that will make Diana think twice about trying to take what's rightfully yours. The key is inside this locket. You've been more of a granddaughter to me than Emma ever was. Stand your ground, dear one. The truth will set you free. All my love, Martha." Sure enough, tucked into the other side of the locket was a tiny brass key. I held it up to the light, my mind racing. What secrets had Martha been keeping all these years? And how would they change everything? I carefully refolded the letter and returned it to the locket, my heart pounding with equal parts anticipation and anxiety. Tomorrow, I decided I would drive out to the lake house. Whatever was in that desk, Martha had clearly meant for me to find it when I needed it most. And after today's power play with the family jewels, I definitely needed it now. The drive to Martha's lake house took just over 2 hours, each mile heightening my anticipation. I hadn't told James about the letter or where I was going, not because I didn't trust him, but because I knew his mother would somehow extract the information from him. Years of Diana's interrogations had left him with paper-thin defenses against her questioning. The house looked exactly as it had 3 months ago, when we'd last visited Martha here. The whitewashed porch still held her favorite rocking chair, and her prized roses still bloomed in neat beds along a walkway. Only the slightly overgrown grass hinted at her absence. Inside, everything remained untouched. Diana hadn't yet managed to get her hands on this place, though not for lack of trying. The antique writing desk stood in its usual spot by the bay window, morning sunlight streaming across its polished surface. My hands shook slightly as I fit the tiny key from the locket into the desk's central drawer. It turned with a satisfying click. Inside, beneath a stack of Martha's personal letterhead, lay a large manila envelope. "For Sarah. Open when needed" was written across the front in her distinctive script. I settled into Martha's old leather chair and carefully opened the envelope. Several documents slid out, along with a handwritten letter dated just 6 months ago. "Dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then Diana has finally shown her true colors. I've watched her machinations for years, the way she's tried to undermine your marriage, how she's promoted Emma as the real daughter James should have married instead. It's time you knew the truth about Diana and why she's always felt so threatened by you. You see, Diana isn't James' biological mother. I found out shortly after she married my son Thomas. A nurse from the hospital where James was born recognized Diana, had a charity event, and pulled me aside. She remembered the strange circumstances, how Diana had claimed to have given birth while my son was away on business, but had actually arranged a private adoption and passed the baby off as her own. I confronted her with this information, and she broke down and confessed everything. She'd been unable to conceive and was terrified Thomas would leave her, so she made a desperate choice. Thomas never knew. I agreed to keep Diana's secret as long as she proved to be a good mother to James, and for many years she was. But I've watched her growing bitterness and obsession with making Emma the perfect child, and I fear what she might do once I'm gone. In this envelope, you'll find copies of the original adoption papers, my signed affidavit about Diana's confession, and the nurse's sworn statement. I've kept them safe all these years as insurance against Diana's worst impulses. Use them wisely. Remember, this information may hurt James deeply, Share it only if absolutely necessary. Sometimes the threat of exposure is more powerful than exposure itself. All my love. Martha, I sat back stunned. The other papers confirmed everything. Official documents showing James' adoption, statements from hospital staff, even old photographs showing Diana without any signs of pregnancy just weeks before James' supposed birth. This explained so much. Diana's obsession with bloodlines, her overwhelming favoritism toward Emma, her desperate need to prove Emma was the only real Douglas. She'd spent decades building her identity around being the Douglas family matriarch, and she saw me as a threat to that carefully constructed facade. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Emma. The sapphire necklace looks amazing with my new dress. So glad these precious family pieces are finally with their rightful owner. A photo followed. Emma wearing Martha's beloved necklace, Diana beaming beside her. The casual cruelty of it made my blood boil. I started to type an angry response, then stopped. Martha hadn't given me this information for petty revenge. She'd given me protection. A way to stand my ground without stooping to their level. Instead, I texted back, "You both look lovely. By the way, I'm at the lake house going through some of Martha's old papers. She left such interesting documents. Would you like to meet for coffee tomorrow to discuss them?" The response was almost immediate. "What documents?" I smiled, tucking Martha's letter safely away. "Oh, just some old family history. Very enlightening. I'm sure your mother would find them fascinating." There was a long pause before Emma replied, "I'll ask Mom when she wants to meet." I knew Diana would be calling any minute, probably in a panic, but for the first time in 5 years, I felt ready to face her. Martha had given me more than just evidence. She'd given me understanding. Diana wasn't the powerful matriarch she pretended to be. She was a frightened woman who had spent decades building walls to protect her secrets. And now I held the key to those walls. The desk phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through my thoughts. Diana's number flashed on the caller ID. I took a deep breath, channeling Martha's quiet strength, and picked up the receiver. Time to change the rules of this game. "What exactly did you find?" Diana's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "Perhaps we should discuss this in person," I replied calmly. "The lake house seems appropriate, don't you think? Martha's favorite place." The line went quiet except for Diana's rapid breathing. Finally, she spoke. "I'll be there in 2 hours. Alone." When Diana arrived, she traded her usual polished appearance for something more frantic. Her designer blouse was buttoned incorrectly, and her carefully styled hair showed signs of anxious fingers running through it. I met her on the porch, where Martha and I had shared so many afternoon teas. "Would you like to sit?" I gestured to the rocking chairs. "Don't play games with me," Diana snapped. "What did you find?" I studied her face, the fear in her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands. For the first time, I saw past the intimidating facade to the frightened woman beneath. "I found the truth," I said softly. "About James. About you." All the color drained from her face. She gripped the porch railing for support. Martha promised she'd never tell. She didn't, not while she was alive. But she made sure the truth wouldn't die with her. Diana sank into the nearest rocker, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "Are you going to tell him?" I sat in Martha's old chair, feeling her presence around us. "That depends on you, Diana. I don't want to hurt James." Martha didn't want that either. She wanted peace in this family, real peace, not just the appearance of it. "What do you want?" Diana whispered. "I want what Martha wanted, to be accepted as part of this family. No more schemes, no more trying to push me out or elevate Emma above me. We're both James' family. We both love him." Tears filled Diana's eyes. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "When I couldn't have children, Thomas wanted them so badly. The adoption seemed like the only way. Then when I finally had Emma, I thought I had to prove that you were a real mother." I finished gently. "Diana, you've been James' mother his entire life. Nothing changes that. But trying to erase me from the family won't make your position more secure. It only causes pain." She wiped her eyes, looking lost. "The jewelry should be shared," I said firmly. "Family heirlooms are meant to connect us, not divide us." Martha knew that. Diana nodded slowly. She always did know best. She straightened in her chair, some of her old dignity returning. "I'll have Emma return the jewelry tomorrow." We can decide together how to share them. Thank you. I touched the locket at my throat. Martha would be proud of us having this conversation. She wanted so badly for us to be real family, Diana said softly. I was too afraid to let that happen. We can start now, I offered. Not as rivals, but as James' family, both of us. Later that evening, as James and I sat on a lake house porch watching the sunset, I felt Martha's presence more strongly than ever. The truth she'd entrusted to me had done exactly what she hoped, not destroyed the family, but begun to heal it. Mom called me, James said, puzzled. She invited us for dinner tomorrow. Said she wants to make some changes, make things right. What happened? I squeezed his hand, touching my locket with the other. Some secrets were better kept, not to deceive, but to protect. Let's just say Martha left us one final gift, the chance to be a real family. She always was the wisest of us, he smiled. Above us, the evening star appeared, the first light in the darkening sky. Like Martha's truth, it hadn't destroyed the day, but transformed it into something new and full of possibility. Deanna would need time to fully change, I knew that. But Martha had given us the tools to build something better, not through force or exposure, but through understanding and compassion. The family jewels would be returned, but more importantly, the real treasure, the chance for genuine family bonds, was finally within reach. Martha had known all along what we needed, not weapons to destroy each other, but bridges to connect us. In the end, her greatest heirloom wasn't the jewelry or even the truth she preserved. It was the chance for grace, for change, for healing. And that was worth more than all the family jewels in the world. Your savings are now my luxury villa. Amanda's text lit up my phone screen at 3 a.m. Thanks for being such a trusting sister-in-law. The view from my new balcony is going to be amazing. I stared at the message, my hand steady as I held my phone. The soft glow of my laptop was the only light in my home office, where I'd been waiting for this exact moment. Another text buzzed through. Don't bother checking your accounts. I've already transferred everything. Sweet dreams. My name is Olivia Chen, and at 34, I just watched my sister-in-law attempt to steal what she thought was my entire life savings. I should have been panicking, crying, or at least angry. Instead, I felt an odd sense of calm as I opened my banking app. The account showed exactly what I expected. $800,000 transferred out at 2:47 a.m. to an account I didn't recognize. I took a screenshot, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Then I sent Amanda a simple reply. Thanks for letting me know. I could almost picture her face as she read my response, her smug smile faltering just slightly at my lack of distress. She'd been planning this for months, probably expecting hysterical phone calls or desperate pleas. Instead, she got 2 words and radio silence. What Amanda didn't know was that I'm a forensic accountant. I spend my days tracking financial fraud and helping clients protect their assets. More importantly, she had no idea that the account she'd just emptied was a carefully crafted trap, set up 6 months ago when I first noticed her unusual interest in my finances. It started with casual questions at family dinners. How do you manage your money, Olivia? She'd ask, eyes sharp despite her relaxed tone. It must be nice having such a cushion to fall back on. My brother Mark, ever oblivious to his wife's schemes, would just smile and nod along. Then came the accidental glimpses of my bank statements when she visited, the careful mentions of her dream villa in the Mediterranean, and the not-so-subtle hints about family helping family. I recognized the signs. I'd seen them countless times in my work. The gradual gathering of information, the careful grooming of their target, the search for vulnerabilities. So I prepared. The account Amanda just emptied was real enough to withstand basic scrutiny. But every transaction had been carefully documented and reported to the authorities in advance. Each withdrawal she made would trigger automatic alerts to both my lawyer and the bank's fraud department. I opened my laptop and checked my secure email. Right on schedule, there were 3 notifications. One from the bank confirming suspicious activity, one from my lawyer acknowledging the predicted transfer, and one from the fraud investigation team requesting confirmation to proceed. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mark, my brother. Olivia, we need to talk. Amanda told me what she did. Please don't do anything rash. She's just trying to give us a better life. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. Mark had always been protective of me after our parents died, but his marriage to Amanda 3 years ago had changed him. He'd become increasingly distant, defensive, and willing to justify Amanda's behavior, no matter how outrageous. Nothing rash, I typed back. Get some sleep, Mark. We'll talk tomorrow. I thought about the real money, safely secured in accounts Amanda would never find. The $800,000 she'd stolen was substantial, but it was a calculated sacrifice, enough to trigger serious legal consequences, but not enough to actually damage my financial security. Another text from Amanda. Don't bother calling Mark. He supports me 100%. You've always had it too easy anyway. It's time someone else got to enjoy the good life. I added the text to my evidence file. Each message was another nail in the coffin she was building for herself. I'd learned long ago that sometimes the best strategy was to let people reveal their true nature on their own terms. The last piece of my trap was already in motion. Before setting up the decoy account, I'd met with the real estate agent Amanda had been working with. The agent, alarmed by some irregularities in Amanda's loan application, had been more than willing to cooperate with my investigation. The villa Amanda thought she was buying. The down payment would go through, but the transaction would immediately trigger a fraud alert. By attempting to purchase property with stolen funds, she wasn't just committing theft. She was engaging in international wire fraud. I poured myself a glass of water and watched the sunrise from my office window. In a few hours, Amanda would probably be celebrating her victory with expensive champagne, planning her new life in the Mediterranean sun. She had no idea she just walked into a trap that would cost her everything. My phone buzzed one final time. A photo from Amanda, her holding a glass of champagne. The contract for the villa clearly visible on the table in front of her. Au revoir, she wrote. Don't worry, I'll send you a postcard from my new villa. I smiled, saving the photo. In the background of her celebratory shot, I could clearly see the fraudulent wire transfer documentation. It was the final piece of evidence I needed. I sent one last text to my lawyer. She took the bait, everything proceeding as planned. Then I went to bed, sleeping soundly for the first time in months. Tomorrow would bring chaos, but for now I had the peace of knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Amanda's celebratory tone from last night had shifted dramatically, replaced by increasingly frantic messages. What's wrong with the transfer? Why is the bank calling me? Answer or your fate on me. You did something, didn't you? I took my time getting ready, brewing my favorite coffee and settling into my home office before responding to anyone. The bank's fraud department had already sent their morning update. Amanda's attempt to wire the money internationally had been flagged and frozen. Her dream villa was slipping through her fingers. Mark's messages were different, a mix of anger and desperation. How could you do this to us? Amanda's crying. She said you set her up. We're family, Olivia. Family helps family. I thought about my brother, about the way he changed since meeting Amanda 3 years ago. He'd gone from my protective older brother to someone who enabled his wife's worst impulses, all in the name of family. At exactly 9 a.m., I called my lawyer, Sarah Douglas. Good morning, she answered, sounding pleased. I assume you've seen the notifications. The bank's fraud department is building quite a case. What's our next step? I asked, taking notes as she outlined the proceedings. The bank had frozen not just the stolen funds, but all of Amanda's accounts. The international wire transfer attempt had triggered multiple fraud alerts, and her previous financial activities were now under scrutiny. She's been busy, Sarah noted. The bank found evidence of other suspicious transfers. Looks like you weren't her first target, just her biggest. That didn't surprise me. In my work as a forensic accountant, I learned that financial predators rarely started with big scores. They built up to them, testing boundaries and perfecting their techniques. My doorbell rang at 10:30 a.m. Through the security camera, I saw Amanda standing there, makeup perfect but her designer outfit slightly disheveled. Mark hovered behind her, looking uncomfortable. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. Yes. How dare you? Amanda hissed, trying to push past me. You ruined everything. The bank froze all our accounts. The villa seller is threatening legal action. This is all your fault. I stayed calm, remembering the security cameras recording every moment. My fault. You tried to steal my savings, Amanda. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Notice? You trapped me. She was practically screaming now. You set up that account on purpose. You wanted this to happen. Amanda, I said quietly, you just admitted to stealing my money. On camera, would you like to confess to anything else while you're here? She stepped back, finally noticing the security cameras. Mark put his hand on her shoulder, trying to pull her away. Olivia, please, he pleaded. We can work this out. Just tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. The confident, protective older brother I'd grown up with was gone, replaced by someone who would rather enable theft than face an uncomfortable truth. It's not that simple, I explained. The bank's fraud department is involved now. They found other suspicious transfers in Amanda's history. This goes beyond just me. Amanda's face went pale. You're lying. They can't look at my other accounts. They can when you attempt international wire fraud. Every transaction you've made in the last 7 years is being reviewed. Mark's hand dropped from Amanda's shoulder. Other accounts? Amanda, what is she talking about? But Amanda was already backing away, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. This isn't fair. You had all that money just sitting there, and I needed it more than you did. The villa was supposed to be our fresh start. A fresh start built on stolen money? I shook my head. The police will be contacting you soon. I suggest you get a lawyer. As they left, I heard Amanda starting to cry, telling Mark none of this was her fault, that I was just jealous of their happiness. But I could see doubt creeping into my brother's expression for the first time. Inside, I found more messages waiting. The bank wanted to schedule a formal interview. The fraud department had uncovered transfers from at least 3 other victims. Sarah had already started preparing documentation for a civil suit. I sat down at my desk, pulling up the file I'd been building for months. Every suspicious question Amanda had asked about my finances, every accidental glimpse of my bank statements, every conversation about her dreams of Mediterranean luxury. It was all documented, painting a clear picture of premeditation. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. The bank called. They're saying Amanda stole from other people too. Tell me you didn't know about this. I suspected, I replied honestly. That's why I was prepared. I don't know what to believe anymore, he wrote back. She's locked herself in our bedroom, calling everyone we know for loans. She keeps saying you tricked her, but did I miss something? Was I blind? My heart ached for him. Come over tomorrow, I suggested. We need to talk. Just us. That evening, I received an email from the villa's real estate agent. Amanda's wire transfer had been rejected, and they were filing their own fraud report. Her dream of Mediterranean luxury had officially died. More messages poured in as word spread. Other victims of Amanda's financial manipulation started coming forward, sharing similar stories. She'd taken advantage of family connections, used emotional manipulation, and always played the victim when confronted. I thought about the moment 6 months ago when I first suspected Amanda was targeting me. I could have confronted her then, could have warned her off, or exposed her schemes immediately. But years of working in forensic accounting had taught me that people like Amanda never stopped until they faced real consequences. By setting my trap and letting her walk into it, I hadn't just protected myself. I created an opportunity for all her victims to find justice. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone face the results of their own actions. As night fell, I sat in my quiet house, looking through old family photos. There was Mark at my college graduation, beaming with pride. Us at our parents' last anniversary party. Holidays, birthdays, countless moments before Amanda entered our lives and twisted everything. I miss you, I texted Mark. The real you. Minutes passed before his response. I miss me too. The next 3 months unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony, each revelation adding to Amanda's downfall. The bank's investigation uncovered a pattern of financial manipulation spanning 5 years. Beyond the 3 victims we initially knew about, 4 more came forward with similar stories. Mark showed up at my door one rainy evening, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The police interviewed me today, he said, slumping onto my couch. They showed me everything. All the transfers, the manipulation, the lies. How did I not see it? I handed him a cup of coffee and sat beside him. She was good at what she did. That's why she got away with it for so long. Did you know, he said, staring into his cup, she was planning to leave me once she had the villa? The police found emails to some guy in Greece. She was going to take the money and just disappear. I hadn't known that detail, but it didn't surprise me. Amanda had always seen Mark as a means to an end, a stepping stone to the luxury lifestyle she craved. The criminal charges came down like hammer blows. Multiple counts of fraud, attempted wire fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. Amanda's lawyer pushed for a plea deal, but the evidence was too overwhelming. My careful documentation, combined with the bank's investigation, had created an airtight case. 7 years, Mark told me after the sentencing, plus restitution to all the victims. He'd filed for divorce the week before, finally accepting that the woman he'd married was a carefully crafted illusion. My $800,000 was returned, though I'd never actually been at risk. The real satisfaction came from helping Amanda's other victims recover their losses. My testimony as a forensic accountant, combined with the evidence I gathered, ensured they all received restitution. Late one night, I received a letter from Amanda, sent from prison. "You think you're so clever, setting me up like that. But you ruined everything. I had dreams, plans. That villa was supposed to be my fresh start. I hope you're happy with yourself, sitting in your perfect little house with your perfect little life. You'll always be alone." I filed the letter with the others, evidence of her unrepentant nature. She still didn't understand that this wasn't about cleverness or winning. It was about justice, about protecting people from predators who saw family ties as weapons to exploit. Mark started therapy, working through the trauma of Amanda's betrayal. Slowly, I saw glimpses of my old brother returning. We began having weekly dinners together, rebuilding the bond that Amanda had nearly destroyed. "You know what's funny?" he said during one of these dinners. "When Amanda first told me she'd taken your money, she was so proud of herself. She kept saying how she'd finally won, how she'd beaten a smart sister-in-law at her own game." I smiled, remembering her smug texts. She never realized the game was already over before she started playing. 6 months after Amanda's sentencing, I received an unexpected email from one of her victims. She'd started a support group for survivors of financial exploitation, and they wanted me to speak about fraud prevention. Standing in front of those people, sharing the knowledge that had protected me and ultimately helped catch Amanda, I felt like something good had finally come from all this. Mark found me after the presentation. "That was amazing," he said, hugging me tightly. "Mom and Dad would be so proud of you." I hugged him back, feeling the strength of our restored bond. Amanda had tried to steal more than money. She tried to steal my relationship with my brother. In the end, she'd lost everything while we'd grown stronger. The $800,000 trap I'd set wasn't just about catching a thief. It was about showing that sometimes the best defense is being prepared, that knowledge and patience are more powerful than greed and manipulation. Amanda never understood that true wealth isn't just about money in an account. It's about integrity, family, and justice. My security cameras caught the last time Amanda's expensive car pulled away from my house. Sometimes I watch that footage and think about how confident she was, how certain of her victory. She never realized she wasn't the predator in this story. She was the prey, caught in a trap of her own making. "Look at you, still wearing those cheap clothes," Vanessa smirked as she sauntered into my living room, her designer handbag swinging from her freshly manicured fingers. I, on the other hand, just had the most amazing transformation. Want to guess how much my new face cost? I stared at my sister-in-law, my heart pounding against my chest as the realization hit me. The sudden changes in her appearance, the bandages barely hidden by her expensive sunglasses, and that smug smile that seemed even more pronounced than usual. It all made terrible sense. "You didn't," I whispered, my fingers clutching the edge of my coffee table. "My name is Olivia Chen, and at 32, I just discovered my sister-in-law had stolen my $300,000 inheritance to fund her extreme plastic surgery makeover. The money my grandmother had left me, meant to start my own small animal rescue, gone. All because I trusted my husband when he said adding Vanessa to our joint account would help with family expenses while she got back on her feet. Oh, but I did." Vanessa practically sang, settling herself onto my couch like she owned it. "And honestly, you should thank me. That money was just sitting there, while I put it to good use. Look at how gorgeous I am now." I felt my world spinning, but years of working as a veterinary technician had taught me to keep calm in crisis situations. "Does Marcus know about this?" I asked, referring to my husband, her brother. Vanessa's new lips curled into a cruel smile. "Marcus? Please, he's been so busy with his new promotion, he barely checks the accounts anymore. Besides, what's he going to do? I'm his baby sister." She was right about one thing. Marcus had been distracted lately, pulling long hours at his new executive position. We barely talked anymore, ships passing in the night. I'd been waiting for the right moment to tell him about my plans for the inheritance, to show him the business plan I carefully crafted for my rescue center. Now it seemed that moment would never come. You had no right, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. That money was left to me by my grandmother. She knew how much I wanted to help animals, to make a difference. Oh, spare me the St. Olivia routine. Vanessa cut in, rolling her eyes. Your precious little animal shelter dream. Get real, I've done you a favor. Now you can stop pretending you're anything more than Marcus's plain little wife. At least one of us is doing something meaningful with their life. The casual cruelty of her words hit me like physical blows, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with my grandmother, just days before she'd passed away. Olivia, my dear, she'd said, her fragile hand squeezing mine. I've watched you work so hard, saving every penny, helping every stray that crossed your path. This money, it's not just an inheritance, it's an investment in your dreams. Don't let anyone take that away from you. I promised her I wouldn't, and now here I was, watching my sister-in-law flaunt her stolen surgery, paid for with my grandmother's legacy. You should leave now, I said quietly, standing up. And Vanessa, you might want to ice that nose. It's starting to look a bit swollen. Her hand flew to her face, panic briefly replacing her smugness. Good. At least the Queen of Perfection still had something to worry about. After she left, I sat down at my computer and began to type. First, I pulled up all the bank statements, documenting every transfer Vanessa had made. Then I started researching the plastic surgery center she'd use, their policies, their payment procedures, their legal obligations regarding fraudulent payments. What Vanessa didn't know was that before becoming a vet tech, I'd spent 3 years working in medical insurance claims. I knew exactly how these high-end clinics operated, and more importantly, I knew their weaknesses. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Working late again. Don't wait up. I stared at the message, thinking about how distant we'd become, how he'd insisted I add Vanessa to our account despite my misgivings. She's family, he'd said. Don't you trust me? Well, he was right about one thing. She was family, and sometimes family needed to learn the hard way about consequences. I opened my email and began composing a message to the surgery center's compliance department, then another to my grandmother's lawyer, who'd helped set up the inheritance. Finally, I reached out to my old colleague from the insurance company, the one who now worked as a fraud investigator. Vanessa thought she'd won, that her new face was worth destroying my dreams, but she'd forgotten something crucial about me. I'd spent my entire career helping injured animals heal. I knew all about patience, about waiting for the right moment to act, about the importance of thorough documentation. And most importantly, I knew that sometimes the best revenge wasn't swift or dramatic. Sometimes it was methodical, carefully planned, and executed with surgical precision. As I worked late into the night, gathering evidence and building my case, I thought about my grandmother's words again. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Don't worry, Gran, I thought as I attached the final documents to my emails. I won't. Vanessa wanted a transformation. Well, she was about to get one, just not the kind she'd paid for with my money. The response from the surgery center's compliance department arrived faster than I expected. Dear Ms. Chen, we take allegations of fraudulent payments very seriously. Our legal team will be in touch within 24 hours. I closed my laptop and looked at the empty side of our bed where Marcus should have been. It was 2 a.m. and he still wasn't home. Another late night at the office, or so he claimed. Part of me wondered if he already knew what his sister had done. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Having some complications with the healing. Need another $5,000 for follow-up procedures. Take it from the account or I'll tell Marcus about your secret meetings with his boss. I stared at the message, almost laughing at her attempt at blackmail. The secret meetings had been about planning Marcus's surprise birthday party 3 months ago. But Vanessa had always been good at twisting reality to suit her needs. The next morning, I walked into the veterinary clinic where I worked, trying to maintain my normal routine. I was checking on a recovering German Shepherd when my phone rang. Marcus's boss, David. Olivia. Just got a strange call from the fraud department at First National. Something about large transfers to a plastic surgery center. They're asking about signatures and authorizations. My heart raced. The wheels were already in motion. Yes, I was going to talk to you about that. My sister-in-law made some unauthorized transactions. I may need to take a few personal days to handle this. David's voice softened. Take all the time you need. And Olivia? Marcus doesn't know yet, does he? No, I admitted. I'm handling it my way first. After hanging up, I checked my email. The surgery center's legal team had sent a detailed questionnaire about the transactions. They were particularly interested in the intake forms Vanessa had signed, forms where she claimed the money was gifted to her. I filled out everything meticulously, attaching bank statements, text messages, and emails that proved the money was my inheritance. Then I added the recent blackmail attempt for good measure. Just as I finished, the clinic's front door chimed. I looked up to see Vanessa storming in, her face partly obscured by large sunglasses despite the cloudy day. What did you do? She hissed, getting dangerously close to the counter where a mother and her child were filling out paperwork. The surgery center just called. They're talking about payment verification and fraud investigations. I smiled politely at the startled clients before leading Vanessa to a private examination room. Lower your voice, I said calmly. You wouldn't want to strain your newly reconstructed vocal cords. She ripped off her sunglasses, revealing significant bruising around her eyes. Fix this now, she demanded. Tell them it was a gift. Tell them you authorized everything. I leaned against the examination table, crossing my arms. Like you told Marcus about taking the money? Or did you think I wouldn't notice the forged signatures on the transfer documents? Vanessa's face, what was visible under the swelling, paled slightly. He's my brother. He'll understand once I explain. Explain what? I cut in. How you stole his wife's inheritance? How you forged documents? How you tried to blackmail me this morning? The surgery center has quite a thick file on you now, Vanessa, and it's not just them asking questions. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. You don't want to do this, Olivia. I can make your life very difficult. Who do you think Marcus will believe? His loving sister or his boring little wife who's never quite fit into the family? I carefully removed her hand, noting the fresh bruises her grip had left. That's assault, Vanessa. In a medical facility with cameras. Would you like me to add that to the file too? For the first time, I saw real fear flash across her face. What do you want? She whispered. I want my money back, every penny, plus interest. You have 48 hours to figure it out before I let the investigation proceed. Oh, and you might want to ice that eye. The swelling's getting worse. After she stormed out, I documented the assault and added the security footage to my growing file. Then I called my grandmother's lawyer again. The surgery center's preparing to reverse the procedures, he confirmed. They can't risk a fraud investigation. Their reputation would be ruined. But Olivia, you should know. Marcus called me this morning. My heart stopped. What did you tell him? The truth. That his sister stole your inheritance and used it for unauthorized cosmetic procedures. He's not taking it well. I thanked him and hung up, my hands shaking slightly. Then I heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Marcus. He appeared in the doorway of the examination room, his face ashen. Tell me it's not true, he said quietly. Tell me my sister didn't steal from you. I pulled out my phone and showed him the documentation. The transfers, the forged signatures, this morning's blackmail attempt. With each swipe, his expression grew darker. I trusted her, he said, his voice breaking. I insisted you add her to the account. This is my fault. No, I replied, touching his arm gently. It's Vanessa's fault, and she's going to fix it. Just then, my phone buzzed with another message from Vanessa. You win. I'm taking out a loan to repay everything, but don't think this is over. I showed Marcus the text. She's right about one thing, I said. It's not over. The surgery center is launching a full investigation into her case. Apparently, she's not the first person to try this kind of fraud. Marcus sat heavily in the nearest chair. All those late nights I've been working. I was trying to save up to help you start your animal rescue. I wanted it to be a surprise. And all this time, Vanessa was. I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time since this began. We'll start over, I said firmly. Together. But first, your sister needs to learn that actions have consequences. As if on cue, my phone rang, the surgery center's legal team. They wanted to know if I pressed charges once their investigation was complete. I looked at Marcus, who nodded slowly. Yes, I said into the phone. I think it's time everyone learned exactly what happens when you steal someone else's dreams. 3 months later, I stood in front of the newly renovated building that would soon become Hope's Haven Animal Rescue, named after my grandmother. The inheritance money had been fully restored with interest after the surgery center's investigation concluded. Vanessa hadn't gone quietly. The day after she took up a loan to repay me, she'd shown up at our house, her partially reversed procedures making her face look oddly distorted. You've ruined everything, she'd screamed, mascara running down her cheeks. The surgery center's filing a report about me. Do you know what this will do to my reputation? About the same thing you tried to do to my dreams, I'd replied calmly, watching as Marcus escorted his sister off our property. The surgery center's investigation had revealed a pattern. Vanessa had attempted similar schemes before, using other people's accounts and forged documents. The only difference was that this time she'd picked the wrong target. You did the right thing, Marcus said now, standing beside me as we looked at the rescue center's fresh paint and new signage. Vanessa needed to face consequences for once in her life. He'd been true to his word about starting over together. The long nights at the office had turned into evenings spent helping me plan the rescue center. Every wall we'd painted, every renovation we'd overseen, had helped rebuild not just the building, but our trust in each other. My phone buzzed. A text from David, Marcus's boss. Board approved your proposal. The company's annual charity donation will go to Hope's Haven. Congratulations. I showed Marcus the message, feeling tears of joy fill my eyes. The rescue center would have corporate backing, ensuring we could help even more animals than I'd originally planned. Look who finally showed up, Marcus muttered, nodding toward the street. Their parents were walking toward us, looking uncomfortable but determined. They hadn't spoken to us since Vanessa's schemes were exposed, choosing instead to believe her claims of being set up. We owe you an apology, their father said gruffly. We found out about the other incidents, the pattern of behavior we ignored for too long. Vanessa's agreed to get counseling, their mother added quietly. Real counseling, not just cosmetic fixes. I nodded, accepting their words but maintaining my distance. Trust, like the rescue center, would need to be rebuilt slowly, with careful attention to foundation and structure. Later that evening, as Marcus and I sat on our porch swing, I pulled out the last photo taken of my grandmother and me. What do you think she'd say about all this? I asked. Marcus smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I think she'd say her granddaughter turned out to be exactly who she knew you were. Someone who doesn't just rescue animals, but knows how to stand up for what's right. A week later, we held the grand opening of Hope's Haven. As I cut the ribbon, surrounded by supporters and four-legged friends waiting for their forever homes, I caught a glimpse of someone watching from across the street. Vanessa, her face now mostly healed but noticeably different from her original features, stood in the shadows. Our eyes met briefly before she turned and walked away, her designer handbag replaced by a sensible tote, her confident strut now a humble stride. I focused back on the ceremony, on the dreams that were finally becoming reality. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, about building something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. Ready to start saving lives? Marcus asked, holding open the door to our new rescue center. I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's words about not letting anyone take away my dreams. More than ready, I replied. After all, everyone deserves a chance at transformation, even if it's not the kind they originally had in mind. As we walked into Hope's Haven together, I knew this was just the beginning. Not just of my dream to help animals in need, but of a new chapter where I'd finally learn to stand up for myself, to protect what mattered, and to turn betrayal into something beautiful. The first rescue dog we'd taken in, a three-legged pit bull with soulful eyes, thumped his tail in greeting. Sometimes the best transformations I realized weren't the ones you paid for with stolen money. They were the ones you earned through perseverance, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what was right.